But in the meantime, how do we see this spirit who had given that poor woman an infirmity? Was he a being? Even though I'm saving, as I've said several times already, the bulk of that topic about demons or of evil spirits for a future book project in this evil side of creation part of my book teaching series, I'm not going to get into that topic here. For our present subject, it's large enough already, and this could take a good amount of space to cover. This book right here is about 600 pages. But I'm going to continue to build upon a thought that I've already dropped a moment ago concerning such demons or evil spirits. That is, during the 4 gospel accounts, that they are incredibly reminiscent to what one would find in a modern day insane asylum or hospital. That thought is about the Greek word spirit, that even though the dictionaries have certainly added in that it's a being from the demonic world, that there's other meanings to our word also. So let's look at spirit. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that Greek word there, but it's from Strong's Greek Dictionary, and I have divided these meanings into 5 different meanings in our current dictionary quote. 1, a current of air. That is breath, a blast, or a breeze. 2, by analogy or figuratively, a spirit. That is human, the rational soul. By implication, a vital principle, a mental disposition, etc. Or 3, superhuman, an angel, a being, a demon, or divine. 4, God, Christ's Spirit, the Holy Spirit. 5, ghost, life, spirit, spiritual, spiritually, mind, as in spiritually minded. All right, now, of course, as I said here, I took it upon myself to divide that Greek meaning into 5 possible choices. So why do most commentators and Bible teachers quickly and naturally pick meaning number 3 as their main or only choice? Again, meaning 3 was a superhuman, an angel, a demon, or a divine. They just automatically choose that as their definition of choice. Now, to me, the answer is extremely obvious. Most commentators choose this because it's what they themselves had been taught and unknowingly have become biased in their views on that matter. Is that cruel of me to say? Well, in some case or other, we're all biased to things that we have learned when we were young, aren't we? I myself shudder to think of what may still lie within me that I might have been taught in my own youth that was incorrect. And in turn, it led me and it leads me to be biased on my first choice of understandings. Again, see my note at the beginning of this book called An Important Message from the Author. That's where I remind everybody in every one of my books that I could make mistakes, but to double check this for yourself. In showing how that anybody could be wrong on any issue from the Bible. And that's why we study to show ourselves approved, for we do not gain total truth overnight, but I'm also convinced that none of us will ever gain total truth anyway. We learn what God wishes for us to learn in the short time that we're here. But that last statement is another topic for another time. In my own consideration as to what this spirit of infirmity really was, I, of course, do not see it as a literal being who had slapped that disease onto her, but I'm seeing this instead as to being an issue which her own body naturally had obtained. For it just so happens that some of us get sick. Some people get diseases randomly in this life without the aid of any outside source, which topic I spoke on pretty good detail about in part 1 of this current book topic of the evil side of creation in my book called Blaming God, Is It Really His Fault? and of which I actually echoed in here in chapter 1 when I quoted Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verses 5 through 8, in that God initially had wound up nature at the beginning of time, and then he let it loose to go upon its own circuits of randomness, which not only includes the rivers and winds outside, but it also includes illnesses and diseases, of which that thought I have another explanatory note called Illnesses and Diseases. Now, earlier in this book, in an earlier chapter, I spoke about random diseases that get onto our bodies as to being the Satan, having the definite article affixed to the word Satan there, indicating, of course, something bad which is opposed to God. That is, random illnesses, though bad to us, being random issues that just simply occur in life. However, we should know that God many times does use evil things against us for our learning and our education, called trials and tribulations. And sometimes, not every time. Sometimes, though many do not want to hear this, God can, on rare occasions, lay diseases and illnesses upon us for one of several purposes. Really? Such as we see God doing to Job in Job 2:7. And yes, I did go over such things in some detail in my book, Blaming God. However, and since I just opened this can of worms just now, please allow me to quote what I had said therein to satisfy that raised eyebrow that many of you just took upon yourself. And for those who may have gotten offended at what I just said, please give me a chance to explain my position before either tossing the book down if you're reading the paperback book, or if you're watching a video, don't shut me off just yet. So here's what I said in my book, Blaming God. We're going to quote Psalms 115, verse 3. But our God is in the heavens. He has done whatsoever has pleased him. He done whatever with what he has pleased. That's what I'm trying to say. But will he go so far as to actually cause illnesses to display his glory, his power, and his might for others to witness? Again, I'm quoting my book, Blaming God here. Is that a complete impossibility, or is it ridiculous to even consider? Let's also read the following in John 9, verses 1 through 3. This is right from your Bible. Jesus passed by. He saw a man which was blind from his birth. Jesus' disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did the sin? That this man, was it this man or his parents that made him be born blind? Jesus answered, Neither has this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. That was the reason he was born blind. Now, Jesus declared boldly that neither that man nor his parents had committed any sin to cause that disability to occur. But then he added that his blindness was so that the works of God could be made manifest in him. What does that even mean? Now, let's quote the biblical illustrator. Get some good thoughts on this. There is this startling fact that the only sinless being the world ever saw, meaning Jesus, had learned obedience by the things which he suffered. Hebrews 5:8. Don't then say in the case of a given sufferer, here is the wrath of God. For the varied forms of affliction are often divine appliances for testing our principles, developing our graces, and practicing our virtues. Personal suffering is sometimes for the sake of other people, that their patience may be disciplined, their sympathy elicited, their character gets its necessary training. It was so in the case of Lazarus. Jesus said, I'm glad I was not there to stop him from dying. But some may ask, what is to become of the people who bear the cross that others may have those opportunities? Leave them with God. Just leave it with God. He has a vast universe and long ages to recompense them in. Jesus wore a crown of thorns. How glad today that we are that he did wear it. Mary and Martha, they were glad after he was raised that their brother had died, that Lazarus died. They were glad that he was raised. Look at some of the sorrows in our life. Why do the thorns grow? That you may have to pull them up and get improvement of character from that weeding. Why are children born ignorant and helpless? That you may care for them and teach them. Why do accidents happen? That you can have a chance to minister. What are we daring to say here? What are we even daring to think here? That God can afflict us with certain diseases or disabilities simply to show his glory through us? Is that crazy to suggest? I want it to be understood that by me making these statements, that I certainly do not believe that every time that there's an illness, every time there's an ailment or a disease, that it was God's hand who caused it on purpose. God doesn't take any pleasure in the distribution of chaos just for the sake of unfolding nonsensical misery. However, one can tell from my wording that I do believe that God can, at times, afflict people with illnesses, ailments, diseases, but that it's for very specific reasons and purposes, of which, and occasionally, God may only know the reason why. Let's consider the following and of how God said himself that people would actually, that he would actually put sicknesses and diseases upon some people. It's in the Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 15. The Lord will take away from you all sicknesses and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which you know, upon you, but he will lay them upon all them that hate you. Okay, that's God doing it. Matthew Henry's concise commentary on Deuteronomy 7:15. Diseases are God's servants. They go where he sends them and do what he bids them. God will do his own work in his own method in his own time, and we may be sure that they are always the best, for the best reasons. John Wesley's explanatory notes on Deuteronomy 7:15 actually repeating Matthew Henry. So this is John Wesley. Diseases are God's servants which go where he sends them and do what he bids them. Come on, let's really reason this out. Let's think about this. Now, these kinds of situations, which includes our passages in John 9, 1 through 3 that we read a moment ago, they're going to certainly tell us that this could affect both evil and good people, both the ungodly and the elect, depending certainly on what God's plans are for any given situation. But friends, please do not take this occasion to start analyzing yours and your loved one's illnesses, since such a happening like this is almost too rare to really mention. I've actually heard it said by some trodden folks who've had specific illnesses that surely God was the one that had given it to them for ministerial reasons, speaking with assurance that God had told them of their illnesses' purposes, or what had let them know, or who had let them know that he had ordained it to be. Whether that confirmation was in a still small voice or through the obvious directions that their lives had turned, since people, because of them, were being influenced with tremendous hope, showing, no doubt, that these things were for specific and obvious reasons. And all this was to either educate other people, or it was ordained only for themselves to learn something specific about their own life. Therefore, in being such a rarity as that is, we're to know that the majority of illnesses and diseases in this world are just a part of life's random occurrences, which, and as we have already saw, was a part of all that the things that were initially set into motion by God at the beginning of time. The idea of God being capable of doing such things, however, even if it is on rare occasion, is a thought that almost always is dismissed by the majority of Christians in this world. Always. And yet, as I pointed out with other passages in the Bible, scriptures must stand as a final authority on God.